Point. I'm Kasparian, and we have an excellent show ahead for you guys today, including excellent panelists. So let's go ahead and meet our panelists. First, we have Ramon Galindo. He's a LA reporter for RT.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Great to have you here. We also have Sharon Kyle, who is the publisher of LAProgressive.com.
Nice to meet you, Anna. Congratulations for being the first woman.
Thank you so much. And we also have Brian Unger, frequent guest on the Young Turks, and also the host of How the States Got Their Shapes on the History Channel and H2.
That is correct. And why has it taken so long for the glass ceiling to be broken here in the fill-in capacity?
I don't really understand that.
What's going on
But
here?
I'm glad that I was the first to break that glass ceiling.
Do we need to start protesting outside this building?
Look, if it means I get to host more shows, sure, let's go ahead and do it.
Let's hit the streets.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you're doing a great job so far.
Thank you. Now, we have some really great, fascinating points to cover on today's program, including why the media is so focused on going to war with Iran, what we should do about bullying in our schools, and also why are several websites spying on us, collecting our information, and giving it away to third parties. So those are some pretty heavy-duty topics, but I thought we would start off today's program with a fun story. So earlier this week, I read a story about a 17-year-old by the name of Cody Connor, and he decided it would be an excellent idea to rob his local sex shop, Cupid's Corner, and in the process of doing so, the female who was working at the cash register convinced him to put down the gun, have a nice long conversation about his life with her, and then fill out a job application and earn a decent living. Well, Cody Connor was stupid enough to do so, but I'm glad he was. In the process of doing so, they made a good friendship. He walked out of the store, and of course, the female cashier went ahead and gave that job application to the police officers. And he got arrested shortly after, because of course he included all of his personal information. So as with everything on this show, this story has a point. And the point of this story is, for the first time in a long time, I thought about someone who is more clownish than Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum, or Mitt Romney.
Well, I thought the point was going to be that only good things can happen in sex shops.
Well, that's true too.
Did you say he was trying to rob the sex shop?
He was trying to rob the sex shop.
What was he trying to get? What was the merchandise? What was he trying to get his hands on over
Well,
there?
I originally thought he wanted some sex toys, but that was not the case. He was actually looking to make some money. So.
Oh. Okay.
All right. Now, with that said, let's get straight to our first point. This was submitted to us by Alyona Minkovski of RT's The Alyona Show. Let's watch.
Hi, I'm Alyona Minkovski, host of The Alyona Show here on RT. Now, my point today is that our media acts like war is normal. Not only that, but they help beat the war drums. We've really seen this over the last 10 years as they've repeated verbatim what our lawmakers and military officials have to say to justify war on a global scale that knows no borders and sees no end in sight. And one of the biggest issues is a lack of coverage. In 2010, the cable networks only devoted 4% of their coverage to the war in Afghanistan, which is now America's longest war. When you do see that coverage, it's tinged with fear. It comes from pundits that often only benefit from the military-industrial complex, whether it's generals that cash checks from defense contractors and then are presented as unbiased military analysts, or lawmakers that pass every defense authorization bill without question because there are factories and jobs in their districts. Now, what we don't hear are real questions about whether our foreign policy hurts more than it helps, why men and women are actually losing their lives, and why we're still giving up our civil liberties, all in the name of security 10 years in. War is hell. War should be a last resort, and yet the media has allowed it to be normalized by not questioning the voices that profit from it. So for more, you can watch The Alyona Show at rt.com/USA. You can check out our YouTube page at www.youtube.com/The Alyona Show, and you can follow me on Twitter at The Alyona Show.
Now, Alyona brings up fascinating points there, and I think a lot of people who work in the media can definitely notice that whenever there is question of a sketchy actor in this international spectrum, usually it's fear-mongering. The media tries to make them out to be the bad guys. Maybe we should think about preemptive war. Now, Ramon, you work for the media. You are a reporter. So tell me, do you ever feel pressure to cover these stories with that type of angle?
Well, at this point, I work for RT, so Alyona and I, we work on the same staff. So we are luckily challenged to look beyond that, look beyond what the mainstream media is telling us, and to question more. I mean, what we're seeing today, I believe, is a mainstreaming of this war where the only question that's being asked is, should we go to war right now or should we go to war in 6 months? And the question is, well, why do we have to go to war in the first place? And why are we not questioning these statements that are being made by these government officials or by these supposed experts on the Middle East, when we saw that a decade ago, we just repeated their line verbatim, and obviously we got into a war that was unjustified. Now, we're seeing a repeat of that today. Now, it seems like a few journalists have learned from those mistakes, but unfortunately, when we turn on CNN and other mainstream networks, we're seeing the same narrative where the State Department or the Defense Department says, oh, this guy is guilty of this, without taking them to trial, without showing any real evidence. And these journalists who saw these same mistakes happen a decade ago are still not questioning the government line.
Now, what's incredible, Brian, is the fact that, Iraq turned out to be such a hideous war, and we invaded that country. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Do you see similarities with Iraq and Iran? And have we learned anything at all from the situation back in 2003 when we invaded the country?
Well, it's a really good question. I think, sadly, we've undercut the main rationale for going to war by sort of blowing the Iraq war and the issue of weapons of mass destruction, which we all know were never found. And in fact, there's reason and good reason and even evidence to believe that a lot of it was exaggerated, if there was any evidence. But there seems to be a prevailing post-war attitude that we go to war to prevent nuclear proliferation. That has been part of our doctrine. Since we dropped the bomb, we don't want anyone else to do it. And we're sort of using that same wisdom in this idea that that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. But how do we know now? We've almost kind of ruined the credibility. Do we believe they have one? How do we know? Do we believe the commissions that go in and investigate? And so the rationale for going where it might just be moral or it might be right has been kind of spoiled by the Iraq war. Secondly, I just want to say on the issue of media, there's not enough coverage of the war on media. Mm-hmm. We're in a 24-hour news cycle. We have three 24-hour news networks. Current is fourth as a commentary news network. And yet we're always exposed to this idea that there's not enough time on these channels to talk about things. There's a clock running in the bottom left-hand corner saying, here's news in 3 minutes, and then boom, we're into commercial. We have so much time to actually talk about issues and about war, and about the direction of our policy when it comes to war. But yet there's this hurried news cycle where we're just skipping over things to get to more and more entertaining news. And lastly, and I'll let someone else talk, we put the most important shows that talk about our issues on Sunday morning. We just bury Sunday morning with the best guests, the most relevant talk, the smartest people, for the most part, when most people are sleeping. They sleep through those shows. And then we're off on Monday morning with a parrot who called 911 times 24 every hour. You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of feel like the media has abdicated this entire incentive to be journalistic and forsaken it to be entertaining. And so how can you have good coverage?
Well, I think you make a very valid criticism there. And I think that, a lot of these executives and producers at most of the mainstream media outlets make the assumption that Americans are not interested in what's happening in the, internationally. They don't care about what's going on with the war, or they're not smart enough to understand what's going on with the war.
But it doesn't rate either, Anna. That's the thing. When talking about war, it's not sexy. And for producers at CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, I have to say, MSNBC, they do devote a lot of their coverage to being curious and skeptical toward the approach and march to war. But still, these stories they only last 3 or 4 minutes, and then they're on to the next story.
Okay.
I think we have to wonder how much of the media's effort is put into entertaining the public, because this is what the public is asking for, and how much of the focus is on shaping the public's perception. Now, we have, thank goodness, the internet, because we have an infinite amount of information that's now just available right at the tips of our fingers. If this was 20, 30, 40 years ago, we'd be in a much worse position. Speaking of inspections, Scott Ritter, I'm sure most of you remember his name as we were on our way, marching up to the Iraq War. He had inspected. We have these people in place. The media didn't really cover him very much. And then when he was really vocal about Iraq not having weapons of mass destruction, what happened? His character was tarnished.
He was demonized.
That's right. He was demonized. So I think what we have to wonder is there appears to be serious conflict of interest. We have a military-industrial complex where we have a major concentration of ownership of media in the hands of the likes of GE that has some of the largest DoD contracts. So are we trying to entertain the public because they wish to be entertained, or is the media simply shaping public perception?
Well, I want to weigh in on that because I think Brian also raised the point that we're focused so much more on entertainment than any sort of war coverage. And I have experience both in public and in corporate media. And when I worked in corporate media, I mean, yes, the Iraq War was just not to be mentioned because the poll or the research showed, the corporate research showed that that's not what the viewers wanted to see. And not only that, but corporate media owned by large corporations, they're in it to make money. And if they cannot sell commercials, they are not going to run that story. I mean, if you just run stories that have blood and gore, have war, have the ugly side of things, it's going to be very difficult to sell Huggies commercials. So they are just not going to show that. They're going to show the entertainment side, the softer side of the news.
You're definitely right about that. Look, advertisers control a lot of the decisions that the mainstream media makes, the corporate media makes. That's why they're referred to as the corporate media. But also, going back to your point, Sharon, I think you make an excellent point about how the mainstream media really shapes public perception. And also, you got to really look behind the scenes to see how these shows get produced and who's briefing these producers and these executives at the mainstream news network. So to give you a perfect example, General Barry McCaffrey, during the Iraq War, played a huge role in how CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, how they shaped their programming, right? So there was a lot of fear-mongering. And keep in mind, this is a retired general who is looking to sign contracts with major private contractors, okay? So of course his idea is to push this perception that, you know, these Middle Eastern countries are gonna come after us, they're terrorists, we gotta do what we can to make sure that we invade them and we make sure they don't have weapons of mass destruction. I mean, just to give you an example of some of the things that he has said about Iran, because he's now briefing NBC about how Iran is a threat, he gave them a PowerPoint presentation. He said the following: "We should not view the Iranian rhetoric as empty threats. They are likely to further escalate. There is a great opportunity for miscalculation on their part. They will not, under any circumstances, actually be deterred from going nuclear. They will achieve initial nuclear capability within 36 months. Okay, so he goes on and on and on. Liz Cheney is doing the same thing, appearing on different networks, saying that Iran is a huge threat. Iran is not a huge threat. Right now, they are developing nuclear energy. There's absolutely no proof whatsoever that they're working on missile technology or actual nuclear weapons.
And whether, I mean, you said this, and I have to agree with you, Anna, that the run-up to this war, have we learned anything? You asked that question early on. And remember, Vietnam was based on a whole war, a campaign based on fear. Fear that the entire, Southeast Asia would turn communist, and that didn't happen, and this domino theory and all of this stuff that a bunch of think tanks in the Pentagon thought up and spend their days doing. This march to war, or the rhetoric or the cavalier attitude about war in Iran, is really based on this idea of fear, this idea of someone developing a nuclear weapon where there is no evidence of that. So have we learned anything? Sadly, it doesn't feel like we have learned anything.
Well, I think we have. I think that what has been learned, especially, I mean, when you bring up Vietnam, what was learned is Vietnam was brought into the homes of America. And I think that the powers that be learned that it's best to not show the devastation that war wreaks on an entire population on women, on children. And so it's much easier for this general, for the punditry, for the politicians, those who are buffered from the consequences of their decisions. It's much easier for them to make the claim that we must move ahead because the American public is sort of kept in the dark.
But you know, when fear is incentivizing, is the driver toward war, that was the driver during Vietnam. Yes. I mean, have we learned the lesson of that, where we go to war based on evidence? And I wish we'd even stop using the phrase weapons of mass destruction. That line, that phrase was invented. We used to measure threats by the use of a weapon, like a nuclear bomb, or every country has weapons of mass destruction. Every country has poison gas, or missiles, or bombs, I mean, we really should just stop using that, because that means then everyone is a target.
Now, I want to ask one last question to you guys. And Ramon, I'm going to direct it to you. So now that we know that there's this military-industrial complex, now that we know that, there's this whole system working against us and working against the truth when it comes to Iran, what can we do as independent media outlets to really get the truth out? And I know you publish LAProgressive.com. How can we really get the word out there? Ramon, let's start with you.
Well, that is one thing that is inspiring. There are a lot more outlets now. A lot of people like RT and other outlets, LA Progressive, alternative media, they saw that in 2003 there was no challenge to the status quo. Now we're seeing a lot more of those. They're definitely not as influential as a CNN or a Fox or an ABC, but they are out there, and I think that people are waking up to that. So, I mean, we definitely have to become more savvy as far as the web. I mean, we saw the Coney video, how it just blew up. I mean, we need to be more savvy that way and give people not just, part of the information. I mean, we have to give people, and we have to be aggressive in criticizing the mainstream media when they do commit these grave errors that unfortunately may allow us to go into another war again.
That's right. I agree. I think, as I stated earlier, the internet is just such a gift to us. It is the way that progressives, the way that the well-heeled can have a stakeholder in this. We've got to, just like Ramon said, we've got to be more savvy about getting the word out, and we have the tools. We can do it. So I really have a lot of hope.
Brian, what about the Occupy movement? Do you think the Occupy movement will play a pivotal role in preventing us from another preemptive war?
I doubt it that the Occupy movement will. I feel like 24-hour cable news has spun them as lunatics and people not to be trusted, or they've ruined their credibility. I think the only solution is to turn 24-hour cable news off. Stop watching CNN, stop watching Fox News, turn them all off, and make them basically fulfill their obligation to be reporters, to people who dig for the truth, who are skeptics, who are curious, whose job it is to monitor government and keep them in check, not to entertain us.
All right, we got to take a quick break. Let's do so. And when we come back, anti-bullying legislation, does that make sense? Welcome back to The Point, and our next discussion has to do with anti-bullying legislation. Does it make sense? And this is actually a question that was posed by Rosalind Wiseman, who is the author of Queen Bees and Wannabees. Let's watch.
Hi, I'm Rosalind Wiseman, and I work with parents and kids and educators around the country to prevent bullying. Now, there has been a lot of attention placed on bullying, which is great. 48 states have passed laws against bullying. The problem is that none of those laws have included appropriations, the funding to provide to teachers and administrators for resources to stop the problem. So I'm asking all of us that we all know that the American educational system is in trouble. We know that kids are struggling. And it's really only common sense that you can't function in school if you do not feel safe. Now, I want to just take a moment to really talk about what bullying looks like in today's schools. It looks like kids who are Latino being teased for being deported. It looks like if you're Arabic or you're Muslim, that kids are teasing you about being, Osama bin Laden's cousin. It looks like if you bend over in the hallway because your books have scattered, that somebody takes a picture of you and forwards it to everybody with the express purpose of embarrassing you. So if we've got these issues that are important and we want our kids to be able to function in school, we actually have to go beyond the lip service and give the teachers and the administrators the tools that they actually need. If we do that, we really can address the educational system and bullying for the better.
So Brian, let me ask you, as she mentioned in the video, 48 states have proposed some sort of anti-bullying legislation. Do you think that they're actually genuine in their attempts to fix this problem, or do you think it's just a front?
I don't know. I don't really understand the application of funding resources. You're going to jump all over me, I can tell already. I don't really understand the application of funding tools, resources against something which kids do to each other, have done to each other, will continue to do to one another. How do you prevent it? How do you stop it? How big is the quote unquote the problem? I don't think state legislatures really have a role in that. I just don't see how they are going to legislate how kids are going to tease or not tease one another. Maybe someone can explain it to me.
Let me explain really quickly. I guess a good example would be New Jersey. So Chris Christie passed anti-bullying legislation recently, and he got a lot of flack because he did not set aside the appropriate appropriations for it, right?
For what, though? What would the money be used for?
Well, this is what he planned on doing. He wanted each school district to have like a committee that handles bullying situations immediately, because oftentimes what happens
is... Like a bullying Politburo? Like where you have to go to council?
Well, and here's another thing. A lot of teachers don't know how to deal with bullying. So if a student comes to them and says, look, I've been bullied, this person is constantly harassing me in class, do something about it, a lot of administrators and a lot of teachers just brush it under the rug because they don't want to get fired by doing the wrong thing.
So like when they introduce like a new hamburger at Wendy's and then they make all the employees stick around after their shift to learn how to cook that new hamburger, why can't we teach teachers and train teachers and principals to recognize these new symptoms of bullying or the new signs? Let's make them enforced. Let's make them be like police officers in the classroom when there is bullying.
Now, that's exactly what New Jersey is attempting to do. And you need people to train the teachers, and you have to pay for that. So that's part of the reason why you need money to fund it. But Sharon, what do you think? Do you think that the government should play a role in, bullying situations within our school districts?
I have to admit, when I found out that this was going to be one of the topics, I thought, this is really not really a big deal. But then it occurred to me that I had actually written an article about this about a year ago. And it turns out, according to several researchers, bullying is actually increasing in the schools. Yep. And young people, and particularly young people that are members of the LGBT community, many have committed suicide. And I thought about this and I thought, well, in what other area, what other profession have we crafted legislation that has in fact helped to protect these young people? And one area is in the medical profession. So in the medical profession, if someone brings in a child to the emergency room because let's say they've broken their arm and they're x-rayed and it turns out that it's obvious that that child has actually, or it looks like they've been abused, the medical professional has to report that immediately. And I think that it might not be such a bad idea to impose some types of rules, and as Rosalind Wiseman has indicated, 48 states have endorsed legislation that does just that. The school districts have to take more of a proactive stand in protecting these children. So perhaps it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted on this topic because, yes, all these states have this legislation. Even Chris Christie has jumped on board with it. But to me, it seems like an issue that is so easy to win politically. I mean, who is going to oppose legislation, against bullies? Yeah. So it's a very easy thing for a governor who, and I think it's really ironic because he bashes teachers so much.
Yes.
I mean, by having to go through all these anti-bullying courses, I mean, you're putting a much more burden on these teachers than they already have. So, I mean, it's a very easy thing to jump on, but I come from an old school place where, you know, I was picked on and my dad said, fight back, and that's and that's what we did. But at the same time, I come from a family of educators. My brother's a teacher, my mother's a teacher, and they tell me, yes, bullying is a big problem. In fact, there are several school districts around the country that already have programs in which they address the issue. So in my opinion, I think it is an issue that does need to be addressed, but I think it would be better addressed by the individual school districts themselves that have very much knowledge of what their students are like, what type of demographics are in that school.
Well, you know, what I find fascinating is how, if you look at studies, you'll see that gay teen suicides are more likely to happen in conservative areas, in red states, right? So I think it's very disingenuous of politicians to get on their soapbox and talk about, you know, how bullying is a huge issue in our school districts. We need to address it. Well, why don't we address the fact that you are proposing legislation that promotes bullying on a much larger scale, bullying the gay community, bullying women? I mean, how many stories have we done about the war on women in recent months?
And speaking of red states, this whole legislation, this move to enact legislation to prevent bullying, it started as a result of the Columbine shootings.
Yes.
And one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is, well, why didn't they enact legislation that was with more stricter gun control?
Oh, well, that's because the NRA takes complete control over gun issues.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. They took the path of least resistance and also the path that would give them the greatest attaboys.
Now, there are definitely downsides to the government getting involved with bullying. And one thing that immediately comes to mind is zero tolerance policies. So right now in the country, you're seeing all of these kids getting locked away in juvenile detention centers due to zero tolerance policies. They'll bring scissors to school to work on an art project. An administrator will see it and say, oh my God, that's a weapon. We got to put you away in jail. And if you look at the demographic of students who actually get put away, of course, they're disproportionately minorities, right? So do you, Ramon, see this as an issue in terms of, you know, students getting criminalized for bullying? Maybe administrators are going to jump too quickly onto this anti-bullying bandwagon and, you know, punish kids too harshly?
No, absolutely. I think that's a great point. Now, some of this legislation that I've been going over, it's not as severe as to put them in juvies or criminalizing them, but we definitely run that danger once we keep making these laws. And the last thing that we want to do is to start criminalizing our youth, especially minorities. And that's the other point that I would like to make here, because many of these times these school shootings happen in upper class areas, in white areas. And I was just in South Central yesterday talking to a teacher there who said that there's a young boy who brought a Rambo knife like this long because, I mean, he is scared that he's going to get beat up by the gangsters going to school. These are dangers that are not brought up by lawmakers when they happen in the poorer black neighborhoods, in the poorer Mexican neighborhoods that are very much gang infested and where, you know, just getting to school is a daily battle. So we have to start looking at it in those ways. And that's why I think that the local communities are better equipped to address those issues.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to lump in like school violence with bowling. Guns is not bowling, but it's different. I think the idea that every kid is now like a self-publisher. Every kid in school can put up a picture now online of someone in a compromised position and humiliate someone. And humiliation really is what's driving a lot of people to take, you know, we hear about the suicides constantly and people being humiliated at the point where they don't feel like they can show their face again and they consider death to be like a good way out. And somehow we got to short circuit that idea that when you start humiliating a kid, and I'm not talking about a fist fight in the playground, because we've all been in those, and there's
Every day when I was in school.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about this systematic humiliation of a kid, and that it's repeated and it goes on and people are aware of it. And then somehow it turns out bad. And then we all reflect back on it and go, yeah, he was teased a lot. He was teased, and they put this picture of him up. And everybody's got this sort of encyclopedic knowledge of the chronology of the bullying. Somehow someone's not short-circuiting that process. And I don't know, I'm not an educator. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a principal. My mom was my guidance counselor. That was humiliating, let me tell you. But I just think that my parents were always there to intervene when I got into trouble. And I feel like there are a lot of kids who don't have advocates in school. There's no teacher going, hey, enough. You do that one more time and you're out. And that's how, or they got paddled in the hallway. I got spanked. Did you get paddled?
No.
Oh my God.
I did, yeah.
In front of all the other students?
No, out in the hallway with another teacher as a witness. Can you believe that?
That is unbelievable.
But it worked. Look at me. I turned out okay.
Yeah.
But that's what the legislation and a lot of these new rules, that's what they're supposed to do, is prompt the teacher or mandate that the teacher take action. Because we do have laws on the book that protect people against what you described, this type of harassment or this type of intentional infliction of emotional distress. It's a tort.
Yes.
It's a civil wrong. And we already have laws on the book. So anti-bullying is something that goes a step beyond and requires that teachers and other people in the educational system take a step to protect
And what
schools.
happens if they don't do that? Do they get fired or do they get...
Look, in my opinion, if there is absolute proof that there is bullying, harassment of a student, and the administrators or the teachers that were notified did nothing about it, yes, I think they should be fired. Look, when I was a student, I was bullied every single day by a group of girls. And it got really, really ugly to the point where it became physical. And I remember going to the counselor, talking to the counselor about it and saying, they are bullying me, but I do not want to retaliate because I want to get into a good school. I don't want to get a suspension for engaging in a physical altercation. And he told me, yeah, you don't want to make, you don't want that on your record, so just don't engage, and they'll leave you alone.
Well, that passivity is the problem right there.
It is.
And that is, that should raise all kinds of red flags and sound the alarm.
Definitely.
Well, on a serious note, just lastly,
Let's
I
go
think,
kick those girls' asses, by the way.
although some of this legislation does have a noble intent, I think that many times we create laws without really addressing the core issues of what causes bullying. And, like many times we have all these drug laws, but we don't really examine what is causing drug abuse in our community. So I think that we run that same risk here.
All right, excellent point made by Ramon. We got to take one more break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you about the websites that are spying on you. Is it scaring you? We have a point on that, and we'll have a little discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Point, and our last point is sent to us by Lori Andrews, who wrote the book, I Know Who You Are, and I Saw What You Did. Which sounds a little scary. But she wants to talk to us about internet privacy, which has become a very huge topic recently. So let's watch what she has to say.
I'm Lori Andrews, and I teach a course on the law of social networks at IIT Chicago-Kent College of Law. I've also written a book, I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did, Social Networks and the Death of Privacy. My point today is that the right to privacy should cover what we post on Facebook. I think about people like 24-year-old Ashley Payne, a high school teacher. She went to Ireland on her summer vacation and posted hundreds of pictures of her vacation. In a few of them, she was touring the Guinness factory with a beer in her hand. And because of that photo, she was forced out of her job as a high school teacher. So much information is being posted on our Facebook pages. We post the most intimate information about our sexual preferences, about our political beliefs, about whether or not we hate our family or hate our boss. And if you try to take down your Facebook page when you're 18 or 21 before you go looking for a job, that still doesn't help because companies like Social Intelligence keep the last 7 years worth of public Facebook pages and make them available to employers. Now, if someone were to break into my house to get that sort of information, he'd be guilty of trespass and invasion of privacy. If the cops tried to tap my phone, they'd require a warrant. I think our online rights should be as protective as our offline rights. So you can find out about it and vote on my social network constitution at socialnetworkconstitution.com, or read my book, I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did, Social Networks and the Death of Privacy.
Sharon, let me play devil's advocate here and ask you, do you think that it's the internet's fault, or do you think that it's a person's fault for putting up these pictures on their Facebook pages and not making it private and sharing all this personal information about themselves online?
Well, I think that once you place information in the public sphere, you really don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy. So in one respect, the issues that were addressed by Lori Andrews, I'm not quite getting why she believes that this woman who posted a picture in a very, very public sphere, and she pointed out that Facebook, if you counted the number of people that participate in Facebook as a population, it would be the third largest country. So this woman obviously did not have an expectation that her photo would not be shared.
Now, I agree with you on that. You know, if you don't want pictures like that of yourself shared online, then you probably shouldn't upload them. But, you know, the thing that really annoyed me about that story, Brian, is the fact that she got fired because she had some pictures of her partying, having a drink, and of course the school freaks out and decides to fire her. You know, and then there's this situation with sites like Facebook and Google that collect all of this private information. You think it's private, right? They collect it, they accumulate it, and then later on they sell it to a third party. Now, they do this because, you know, you use their service for free. They need a way of making money. So do you think that's an understandable thing for them to do, or do you see problems there?
Look, I think these are businesses, and their incentive is profit, and the profit is what drives the collection and calling of data and about our privacy, and no one wants to jeopardize that structure of making money off this thing. So you never hear a whistleblower, by the way, coming out of Google or Facebook or anywhere else who does the 60 Minutes interview and says, we are collecting information on every single person who uses this. We know what porn sites they're going to, we know what they're buying, we know how long their emails are. Like, we know all that's going on, and it is. They are collecting all that information. What they do with it right now is the question. But, you know, I think it's creepy just getting a targeted ad the moment I click on a dog house to see if I want to buy it. 30 seconds later, it's on my Facebook page. Hey, do you want to buy a dog house? Like, I mean, they know where you're going. It's like you're leaving this giant vapor trail, and they can just follow you. So, you know, I don't know. It's the wild, wild west, and will remain that way for a long time, because those people in Congress whose job it is to monitor this stuff are like dinosaurs and prehistoric, and they don't even know what the web is.
I love that you mentioned Congress. Ramon, do you see this as a partisan issue? Is this something that you see both Democrats and Republicans kind of getting behind and maybe tackling, so our private information isn't sold without our knowledge?
Well, right now I see it mostly as a left issue, and mostly just kind of an underground issue, because it's not talked about in the mainstream media very much. It's very popular online, but it's not something that I would go to a bar and talk to the person next to me about. I mean, it's not in the public discourse because, like Brian said, we don't know where that information is going yet, and we don't have any evidence yet that it has been used in nefarious ways. However, that is the risky point, because I mean, we've heard politicians say that, you know, they want to have the ability to shut down the internet. They want to have the ability to, you know, track certain groups because an environmental group might be a threat to national security. So in those instances, we have to be very careful. Now, you know, and people have to kind of go out there and do their own research, because there are ways to protect your identity. There are ways to protect your browser searchers, things like that. So, I mean, people do need to be aware of this problem, because right now, although it may not be abused, there's always that chance that later on that it can be, you know, taken out of context, or all your private information is going to be all of a sudden taken for the sake of national security.
Well, Facebook is right now in the middle of a suit where they have actually admitted that they changed their privacy policy. So initially, you know, when you sign up with Facebook, like when any of us launches a new software, there's a bunch of text that goes, and you click and you say, I agree. Well, there is...
What do you agree?
Right, I know. Who reads it? Who reads
start
that
reading
stuff?
that sometime.
Nobody reads it.
Nobody does.
Where I agree.
But apparently, they had made some promises that and then they changed some of the terms of the agreement after people had already clicked that they agreed. And so Facebook has admitted that they've done this, and they are in the process of coming to some kind of negotiated agreement where they are going to handle private information in a way that better serves the public.
I think that clear disclosure here is the real issue, and in a lot of ways, you know, the terms of service, it's too dense. Most Americans are not going to read it. You have to be clear about what information you're collecting, who you're going to share it with. And, you know, the White House was actually working on legislation that would force, you know, web browsers, Google, Facebook, to basically list all the third-party advertisers that they sell your private information to. And another thing that they wanted to do is prevent sites like Google and Facebook from selling this information off to health insurance companies, employers who want to do a little investigation into your personal life to figure out whether or not you're the right person to hire. So given all this information, Brian, are you concerned at all?
We are being tracked. This is not tin hat stuff, even though you wouldn't talk to a guy in a bar about it because you would sound like a conspiratorial weirdo. But we're being tracked, we're being surveilled by corporations and by our governments with just, you know, willful, just eavesdropping, tracking, calling of data, all of that. I changed my DirecTV. I told them I was moving this week. And I went to my mailbox the next day, and there were like 4 or 5 letters. Moving? Where are you going? We can help. It's like they're trying to reach us with their tentacles in any way possible. And how do you beat back a system that is basically caved to government intrusion? The banks do it, insurance companies do it. Everyone is tracking us, our preferences, and every time we hit I agree, we give away everything. And because we don't read that stuff and all those disclaimers and all that stuff. So I actually feel like you cannot hold back this wave. I think it's too late.
It's very difficult to do it. And you know, recently New York Times Magazine did this really incredible piece on how it's not just Google and Facebook, it's retailers that are tracking your information. There was this incredible story about this teenager who became pregnant and her father didn't know about it, but she was going to Target and they were tracking her behavior, the type of things that she's purchasing with her credit card or her debit card. And what ended up happening is Target started sending her coupons for things that she could use for the baby. And the father went to Target, to the corporate offices, and was like, why are you guys sending my, 16-year-old daughter these coupons for diapers? It doesn't make any sense. Later on, he found out, oh, it turns out my teenager's pregnant. Yeah. So Target knew before he did, because Target is tracking her behavior. So this is really a widespread issue. But, let me ask you the last question, Sharon. If you have nothing to hide, should you even be concerned?
Well, yeah, that's one of the issues that's posed before they track your whereabouts and arrest you. So I think that it's really important that we cannot just sit idly by and think that, okay, we have legislation or we have protections in place that can protect us. We have to stay vigilant. Mm-hmm. And even before the virtual world, there's public information. When you go to buy a house and you get your house, the first thing you get is a ton of stuff in the mail, of new furniture, new paint. So your privacy it's invaded all of the time. And I think that we as a people just have to stay on top of these things.
Media organizations too, and I know you wanted this to be the last question, but
no,
media organizations do have to be watchdogs, not on government alone, but also corporations. And it's their jobs to alert the citizenry. It's a war on personal liberty. That's a real war on liberty, not this sort of made up mumbo jumbo you hear in this sort of Republican GOP primary. That's a real war on individual liberty where it's protected by the Constitution, and where the media has to be vigilant, and they have to be watchdogs on corporations who are taking our personal information and selling it.
Well, the only problem is there really is no express right to privacy in the Constitution. So, and that's what many of us think, but in fact it's not there. The Bill of Rights the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, there are some issues of privacy addressed there, but the Constitution itself has no express right to privacy, and privacy issues weren't truly addressed in the courts until the late 1890s. So it's a relatively new phenomenon, this issue of us having the right to privacy, because it really is not constitutionally protected. And ask Justice Scalia.
But how do they know I'm moving so fast?
It is a new avenue, and it does seem like they're trying to address it, but yeah, it's still very, very new, and we just don't know what to do with it.
I definitely don't expect the corporate media to hold corporations accountable for spying on us, but we'll see.
You don't?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, unfortunately, that does it for today's show. I want to thank our panelists, Ramon, Sharon, Brian. You guys did an excellent job. I really enjoyed the discussion. And also, let's thank our video submitters, Alyona Minkovski, Rosalind Wiseman with Queen Bees and Wannabees, an excellent book that she wrote. And finally, Lori Andrews, the author of I Know Who You Are, and I Saw What You Did. Thank you so much for joining us on The Point today. I'm Anna Kasparian, and we'll see you next week with another great episode.